was a recent surprise that the official government in Germany was making an official film about chemtrails. It was quite astonishing that the first time in history here in Germany, an official were talking about chemtrails and explaining us the sense and the usefulness of this method to do something against the bad sun. And so we are in a new step. A few years ago, every person talking about chemtrails has to do with conspiracy, and meanwhile we have the situation that the government is officially talking in a film and documents as well. We found documents as well about this method. So this would be the subject of the following lecture. The audience, and heartily welcome to Querdenken TV. Harald, you make a lot of research in Norway concerning this in times where you have been theoretical of conspiracy, but now you can show the facts, and now you can show the results of this research about chemtrails. What are the facts? What cannot be discussed meanwhile?
Okay, I was in Norway in 2012 for other reasons, but we were asked by farmers who lost parts of their crops in that year to assist with the interpretation of the chemical analysis of the crops, rain samples, soil samples, and so we had a purely scientific approach to the thing. And chemtrailing was not the first thing to look at. Mm-hmm. But once you do the chemistry, you come to this typical fingerprint: barium, strontium, aluminum, titanium, and then you cannot avoid the topic anymore. And but still, with this scientific approach, you come to funny findings that with the amounts you have in the soil, it is not the chemical toxicity as we know it from acid rain or industrial pollution. It must have been a different type of toxicity that was not known till then, just from the amounts.
And couldn't be explained like the...
We had areas in Norway where we had 5 times, 10 times more barium in the soil, and everything was fine.
Yeah.
So toxicity is toxicity. You need to find a mechanism to explain why plants die. So we had a fingerprint. We could relate it to known substances like barium, strontium, titanate, and aluminum oxide that are widely discussed as nanoparticles in the context of geoengineering. But the mechanism of damage was not explainable with the chemicals. So what we did is we stepped back into the question: how do labs analyze? And they analyze with certain types of acid that do not detect nanoparticles at all. This is one thing. So the thing that makes the fingerprint is not exactly what you were discussing about if you talk about nanoparticles used for geoengineering. All you can kind of see in the samples and in the lab is the leftovers of the nanoparticle production within the jet engines, because this is kind of efficient by 85% as an industrial method to produce nanoparticles. You blow chemicals into the engine, they burn together with the fuel and sinter to nanoparticles in the exhaust stream. This is how it is done technically. Mm-hmm. So this is efficient to 85%, and 15% of the chemistry blows out as chemistry. This is what you detect in nature. So what we had is much higher amounts of substances formed as nanoparticles that are not detected at all, unless you use a microscope, and there you can find them. You cannot count them because there are too many, but you can see that they are there.
And the labs didn't do that? I mean...
No, it's not standard analysis for even in Europe, barium is not monitored anymore by state authorities. They just dropped the specs and they don't look at the points that could be vulnerable to the system. This is one thing, kind of, we managed to reveal the types of crystals that are doing damage in nature. We could detect that the damage done is done in means of electromagnetism. and optics. It's interfering with the cell communication that is electromagnetic and optical within the plants. And because these minerals are very, very special minerals with optical properties that you do not find in nature. It's a nanoparticle like this has 4 times more fire than a diamond, and it's piezoelectric. So if you radiate it with electromagnetic fields, it starts spitting out electrons, which is a very sensitive point in plants and mammals and humans to keep this electromagnetic cell potential. So all the damage coming is a completely new mechanism that is not discussed even in science by now. This is one part we could find out, the way damage is done. The second thing is everybody's talking about geoengineering. They blast out billions to make research and discuss future methods, but officially it's not done. And if you dive into it deeply, you have to realize geoengineering is actually not done. They're not lying, they're not doing it. But what
they're just talking about it.
They're just talking about it. A few minor research programs have been run, about 5 or 6 of them, to test methods, but this is not large scale. But what is in action actually is, I always describe it like an onion-like structure of setups. We have military technology that is running on the same particle combinations. Aluminum oxide and barium strontium titanate is a major component in 3D battlefield monitoring. So this is online, 365 days a year to protect the United States from attacks by Russian rockets, to protect Europe, to protect Russia, and to protect China. So this is the entire Northern Hemisphere that is using these particular plasmas for military purposes. And it used to be coordinated by a United Nations office. So this is one of these onion layers. You realize, okay, geoengineering is talked about but not done, but military applications are in use since, I think it's 93 in the United States, 2003, 2004 in Europe. Very strong connected to NATO Partnership of Peace, who is coordinating the particulate plasma spraying. And this is one layer you can grab, and you find all the scientific papers, you find all the discussions within military communities, you find detailed description of the technology. Everything is there, nobody's denying. So this is, when you talk about chemtrailing, this is kind of a ghost that is fought in public, declared being conspiracy. And then there are guys who just do it because it's their normal business. So military applications, first layer. Second layer, you have the intelligence community that is using the same particular plasma for other reasons and other purposes. They combine it with a thing they call smart dust. You can find it in NASA papers. You can find it in CIA papers. It's you can also find it.
This is for what for? Smart dust. Smart dust
is a combination of self-assembling nanomachines and components who are brought into the biosphere, who accumulate within the human body, and assemble to working units within the human body. And they are...
For what reason?
Surveillance. They can... parts of the system are taking again, it's all about light within the cell system. They take out the light from the cells exchanged between the DNA strands and turn it into an electromagnetic signal, which is detectable via satellite and ground stations. So all they need is to kind of identify your DNA fingerprint, light fingerprint, with your name, and then they can watch you 24 hours a day. This is one part. The other part
so we are running a GPS system.
Yes, basically. This is one part. The other part is if you reverse the system, you can take an electromagnetic signal, put it into this smart dust within the body, and it will produce light and will start influencing the light exchange within the DNA system. And this can touch basically all aspects of being a human creature. It goes into the emotional part, it goes into sexuality, it goes into thoughts, so you can mind control and sex control people. Which is an interesting thing if I'm running an intelligence community and I'm into the idea of control. This is heaven. Yeah? This was kind of the second
For the rest, it's hell. I mean, for us...
You don't even realize it.
Yeah, that's right.
Because everything feels natural. You don't realize you are infected by the smart dust. You don't realize that somebody is influencing you because you think it's you. Yeah, so it's not actually hell. It's like just being in a fake movie that is just put on top of you, and suddenly you feel anger and rage, and you start a revolution out of it, and you don't know that it's kind of CIA starting the next color revolution. This is manufactured in different means, and this is kind of why we sit together today.
Because this is the second part of the book you were just writing about.
It is social engineering and technical engineering of our mind, and this meets together and is run by the same entities.
Yeah.
And this
let us continue with the technical engineering, what the research was and the results for especially.
Okay. I came across the ugly aspects of this technology when I translated Kara's book.
Yeah. Die Sonnendiebe.
Die Sonnendiebe in German translation.
Yes.
Sun Thief, Crosswalk, first title
The
in
original,
English.
yeah.
And she was talking about parts of this smart dust concept, and but she didn't put the real name to every detail in the book. All the companies that are in the real world that I discovered in my research were in the book with a little change letter, in the beginning mainly, and she also had certain components that I identified as the Morgellons disease. And I also work not only as a scientist, but also as a journalist. And I started publishing about this Morgellons disease. And my editor always said, "Can you bring me some good news? We're all tired of this kind of world ends stories."
Yeah.
And I happened to meet a Morgellon victim in Berlin. She said she was close to dying from pain and suffering from this disease, and she asked me if I have any solution for her. So I said, okay, I need a solution for my editor to be able to continue publishing. I need some good news. So I stay at your side until you're healed, and then we can tell the world how to heal Morgellons. And if it's about surveillance, and if it's about mind control.
And you have been successful.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's easy. It was a pretty easy game to crack the disease because it's dependent on the chemical and biological environment within the body. And if you heal the environment, the disease, you don't even need to attack these components. They just disappear on their own. This is part of the game, kind of. Many things that appear irrational to us. Like the discussion about genetic modified crop, the discussion about glyphosate by Monsanto, which is obviously poison as hell, and the state authorities just deny and do not do their duty to protect us from this. The opposite, we are stuffed up to here with these poisons. The way they talk about vaccinations and insist on putting mercury on top of the vaccines. If they're not allowed to put it as a component, they disinfect the needles with it just to get the mercury into the veins of our children. And this is all part of this biological engineering, because not all the components can be sprayed, so they need certain other mechanisms to introduce certain components into our system, to turn it into a biological environment that is accepting and growing these parts of the artificial biology that play a role in the self-assembling nanomachines. So it's a very, very complex thing, attacking from completely different sources where you wouldn't even have the idea to look for a connection. Like, how do you connect agriculture with intelligence communities, with smartness? How do you connect medical treatments, which are officially done to protect us from disease, with the interests of the intelligence community? In a way, it gives a perfect picture of fitting together for one purpose. The only thing you really miss out is the global player that could have an interest in acting this way. And on this question, it's like the next layer, which is a little bit difficult to bring into the normal, let's say, normal public. We did a lot of research on the Morgellons, and we kind of had the brilliant opportunity to have a photographic documentations of 14,000 pictures of all components of this disease leaving the human body. So we could fully describe the biological cycle of a fungus called Morgellon fungus that is causing the disease and that is delivering the components for the synthetic biology. Like the diet-off mycelium is one component, and the little hexagons carrying the spores of the fungus is the second component that is needed for the artificial part of the disease, together with the heavy metal quantum dot colors. So we had a good opportunity to completely get the pictures and monitor the disease in this fungus, and it has some properties that even in the sense of the fungus do not make sense. It is assimilating a DNA, which is normal in nature. We have families of fungus that are mainly used in agriculture to fight insects in plantations. And they do this, they eat an insect, and then the fungus is formed in the shape of the insect to attract and infect more insects. And they do this by assimilating the DNA of the insect and growing the mushroom in the form of the insect. So this is still normal Earth biology. So I would expect, if this fungus is addressing humans as a victim to eat up, that they should assimilate the human DNA. And this is something they do, because of the fungus, when it grows in the lower intestines, it has the form of a human embryo. But if you look for the cells responsible for this, this is something completely alien. It is not from this Earth. It looks like coming from space. It's a kind of red stem cell that you can burn in a Bunsen flame. You can put in complete vacuum. You can put to minus 298 degrees, like in open space. And these cells survive everything. And there are certain differences to the human morphogenesis. Normally you would expect, if you have a human embryo built out of a mushroom, that it has two eyes. But no, this thing has one eye. And it is developing sexual organs that are typical for spiders, not for humans. And everything you have in these pictures, scientifically proven and shown, kind of, it looks like these fungus creatures try to create a second generation of some alien species, that after it was born or created or, after developed within these mushrooms, is going into some trans-dimensional space, like a demon, and but stays within the body. And this is where the official name of the Morgellons disease comes. They call it delusional parasititis, because people complain that their body is full of insects crawling around. And this is kind of the scientific part. You can just nail down to the board, and there it stays, because you cannot deny the existence of these things. You have it on pictures, you have it in the lab, you can analyze it. So if you look into literature, like if you go to Michael Crichton's Andromeda, he's exactly showing the hexagon and the fibers and says this is an alien species coming down to assimilate mankind. The novel is from 1968, written in the United States. He must have known something. The Morgellon fungus itself was first mentioned in the 14th century. Old medical books in Europe still show it. So this is an old story that massively comes down from the sky in our days, and it virtually looks like this stuff is sprayed by planes, which is very difficult. Actually, in the normal world everybody's living, there's no solution to this. If you want to kind of extend a little bit your world of view, and you accept that there might be trans-dimensional beings in former times called demons, and you accept the fact that most of the powerful groups on planet Earth are into black magic rituals, and if you talk to black magicians, and they tell you actually it's about dealing with demons, and they give you their spiritual powers and help you to be successful and powerful in your life, and you allow them to suck from your light. It all comes back to transhumanism. It all comes back to the technologies we discovered as being part of the smart dust. So This actually it gives a round picture. You have the entities between humans who are into these black magic, old, ugly ritual stuff. And they are in power. If you look at the Bush family in the United States, it's all skull and bones. I wouldn't call an association skull and bones if it wouldn't be black. And most of them have been caught in stuff like ritual child abuse and all these things. And if you look at the popes, another powerful, you can see the demons in their faces if you have a sense for this type of thing. So broaden your picture and you will see it all. If you stay within what you call rationalism, which is a completely destructed world of the view, which allows kind of centimeter-long connection between terms and no overview, you will never see these things. This is the second point where Kara will come in with social engineering, because even this is part of, as it looks like, of a plan, because people are doing this, messing around with our mind in a way that we are not able to put together the pictures anymore.
The point